All right, guys, day 2 of working on getting this backhoe running to the point where I can get the hydraulics working and hopefully drive it up onto a trailer so I can get it home and finish working on it. So I spent all day on it and kept messing around with it, and it was just the same old, same old. Basically, I could get it to run and start at like full throttle, and then if it maybe just putting load on it, working the hydraulics, or I never even tried moving it, would cause it to stall, and then I would find it wouldn't restart and there'd be no smoke coming out of the stack. And every time I found the same thing was happening, that the rack inside here, the little rod that shuts the fuel off, will move back on its own, or something, the governor maybe actuating it, causes it to move to the full fuel off position, or just enough off so it won't run. Every time I would take this out again, reach in there and push that lever over manually and put it back together, I could get it to restart and repeat. And you know, I was able to lift the bucket, although I noticed today when I came back the bucket's all the way down again. I don't remember if I left it like that. But I was able to work the backhoe, curl the bucket in, so that's in the travel position, and that seems to be holding. That's good. So I did a little bit of research. There was mention that there's a light spring force that's supposed to, that there's some sort of a light spring tension that's supposed to keep that rod in the fuel on position for starting, as long as the solenoid is energized and pulls that pin back. So the idea is, when there's no power to the solenoid, the spring in the solenoid pushes that rod out in the solenoid, that pushes the rod or the fuel rail over the rack over inside here, okay, and keeps it shut off. So if I unscrew that solenoid and take it off completely, that's what allows me to move that back. But then something pulls it back to the off position. Well, the only thing attached to that rod, there's a pin on that rod, and on the back side of the rod there's a linkage, and it goes into this timing case in the front here, which is where the governor and everything is. And it looks to me like apparently there's a spring inside here that looks like it's responsible for doing that job of keeping that in the position that's supposed to allow it to run. Also, this apparently is a fuel shut-off full stop. So this is a manual shut-off right here. So when you actuate this, it does something to the linkage that also pulls that rod to full stop. What I did now, though, is I brought with me today, a couple of my little scriber tools that I have in my arsenal that have these nice magnets on the end. And what I'm hoping I'm going to be able to use this to reach in there, take the solenoid off, reach in there with this, and maybe use the magnet to actually slide it to the run position, so that I don't have to, every time I want to start this thing, I don't have to keep going in there and doing that. That's just to test my theory, really, because I have a feeling it's going to still shut down, but we'll go with that for now. All right, so my magnet's just not strong enough to pull that out. I can definitely feel that I'm getting into the recess there and onto the end of the rod, and the magnet's sticking to it and just not pulling it out. So I'm going to have to open this up again for the 50 millionth time, but oh well. The other thing I want to do, I think, is I'm going to disconnect this big throttle spring, because either that cable is seized or very, very stuck, or the linkage to the pedal is, because that accelerated pedal is way too hard to actuate. So since it's giving me such a problem, I'm going to take this off and just make sure that this is moving freely, that it's not something bound up inside here, and that it's just the linkage to the pedal, which is what I believe. So this is interesting. I took this big spring off and noticed that the throttle by default wants to go to the stop position, or the idle position. If I pull it back, it wants to spring back, and this little spring was on there, but it really wasn't doing much. So something internal is making that stay in the idle position. So you actually have to override it with the, I guess, the friction of the pedal. So that's interesting. So more and more, some indications are pointing to some sort of a problem up here in the front with the governor. And the only way to really get in there to that is to take this front case off, and that is going to be a much bigger job. So I really want to get this home to work on that. All right, so I've got this open again. I brought the correct size metric wrenches with me today, so I would love to be able to take these lines off here, and then I could take that whole injector unit out and get a good look at that linkage, but I can't because I was able to get this one off because I've got room to get the wrenches in there. But then the problem is these are so close together, I've got no way to hold this bottom part while I try and loosen this top part. And when I try and loosen this top part, this is what turns. So the only way I could really take this all apart is if I'm willing to take this out, this unit right here, out of the top, and then that would give me room to get the wrenches in there to work on the next one, and then take that one out, and so on and so on. The problem with that is I really don't feel like opening up all these components here in the field. We got all of this garbage that's on top of here and stuff that is not conducive to fuel injection systems. So I think we're going to just try and figure out some other way to do this. So I just wanted to show, there's the end of that rod I'm talking about. Watch when I push this manual stop, that pushes this rod out, that brings it to the no fuel position. And what's happening is, while it's running, something is causing this to go back in here and killing the engine. So that's the, all right, that's full on position there. I also noticed that activating the throttle doesn't affect that, so that's interesting, because the throttle's probably working in conjunction with the governor, and when the engine's not running, that's probably why it's not having any effect. That's a theory. All right, just for the heck of it, I'm going to try and start it with the throttle disconnected so that it's basically in the idle position. We'll see what happens. Interesting, I'm getting smoke, so maybe if I did give it a little more throttle, maybe it would run. Huh. I got the pedal all the way up, but I put the spring on, and that actually does pull that lever back a little bit. Let's see what happens now. I'm going to do nothing. I am not going to touch any of the hydraulics or anything and let it run for a little bit and see if it just dies on its own. I want to make sure that I'm not just assuming that working the hydraulics and putting it under load is what's killing it. It may be that I just wasn't waiting long enough, and it may be some other issue that just makes it die on its own. Not to mention, all this time that it's running right now, it's running that cleaner diesel fuel that I put in there yesterday through the system. And that should help clean things up. Clean diesel is a great solvent. If you watch my channel, you probably heard me say that before, but now whatever. That's purring like a kitten, though. There's nothing wrong with this motor. And I'm just a half-assed diesel mechanic, and I can tell that. Sounds beautiful. See? There is something else going on here, maybe. Bet you it doesn't donuts. It won't want to restart, and it won't even put any smoke out of the stack now. Yeah, I told you. I've opened it up once again, only this time I got this out a little bit further. So I could see this clip right here that you have to pull out to disengage this linkage from the injector body, and that will let me pull this whole assembly out of here. I think I've got just enough clearance, even though I can't get the lines off of here, to open it up and see if I can get a better look at what's going on here. So I'm gonna pull this pin very carefully, because if you drop it and it falls down on the motor, well, that's bad. All right, let me show you what I did here. Got this out here and took a good look at it. I took some cleaner and I blasted off. I was careful, I closed the fuel inlet here, and I blasted off all the dirt and grime that was on top of the pump here. Cleaned this up, all the mouse poop and little seeds and stuff that the critters had been dumping on that top of that engine. And then I cleaned this body. But before I did that, I was looking at the rod here in question. Okay, so this is the lever. You can see it clearly says stop with an arrow pointing that way. So that's the stop, no fuel position. And that's on or run, right? And I noticed when I was moving this back and forth that it was binding a little bit. Now, I think from the videos that I've seen, there's actually a rack of teeth on the back side of this, and that rack of teeth actually engages a barrel-shaped device in these injector ports here and rotates it to probably shut the fuel off. I'm wondering whether or not there was something stuck in there, because all I did was clean this all off the top, and then I decided to just hit this side here because I had a bunch of gunk on it. Clean that and clean this side, right? And then I noticed that now all of a sudden this is moving a lot more freely than it was. So I was going to go to a drastic plan, which was I was going to rig up a piece of wire to loop over this post and run out the hole that the shutoff solenoid normally screws into, and use that to actually actuate this, so I didn't have to take this apart every single time that the governor tried to pull this closed on me. But now that it's moving so much more freely, I'm tempted to give it one more shot, just leave it the way it's supposed to be and see what happens. Oh, what the heck. Okay, got it back together, ready to try again. This time I think I'm going to get right up into the driver's compartment if it starts, and try and get the loader up and see if it'll actually move, because I really got to start figuring out what my plan's going to be for getting this machine out of here. I'm an idiot. I forgot to turn this key on. I'm using for some reason the start circuit's not working anymore, so I've been using this bypass over there, but I forgot to turn this key on, which is the fuel pump. I'm so thrilled. It's working. And it's staying running. There must have been some piece of gunk or debris stuck in that rack on that injector pump and causing all my problems. I love it. I think that's the longest it's run. So now, here's the true test. Let's shut it off and see if it restarts. Oh, that's right, the shut-off solenoid's still out. Duh. That's right, the shut-off solenoid is still out of the tractor, so the key is not going to shut it off. Alright, so theoretically, I should be able to just turn the key back on, crank this puppy, my wire broke off of my makeshift little starter here. Hey, hey, love it. Love it. Okay, I got the fuel shutdown solenoid back in. That is tough to get that in, but I was blessed with long fingers and I was able to manage it. I think if I remove this bracket right here that the throttle cable attaches to, that probably would have helped, but yeah, whatever. I'm going to see if it'll restart. I'm still wondering what happened with this, why it doesn't start from the key anymore. There's got to be a safety switch that I inadvertently triggered when I was messing with it the other day, because it was cranking from this perfectly fine. But alright, so now I've got the solenoid plugged in. It should have moved to the run position. That solenoid's been working fine out of the tractor, so let's see if it restarts. Oh, you're kidding me. You believe this? Well, that's it. I'm out of time for today. I'll put my tools away. I'll come back here with the trailer on Saturday and bring my tools and see if we can't get it to start and run about the same it did before. There's also something seriously wrong with the brakes. The pedals feel like they won't depress at all, but it did roll and move no problem with the parking brake off, so at least they're not stuck on. And there's a brake reservoir right there, so this tells me it's supposed to be power brakes. But all the hydraulics were working. That was good. Nice. Oh, well. Oh, phone call.